Hello and welcome to PocketGamer.biz's weekly news roundup. And this is for the week ending the 16th of August 2013. It's been, I guess, as it is in the summer, sometimes quite a quiet week. We've got Gamescom and GDC Europe, which are the big kind of European game shows, trade show and consumer show. They're starting next week. So Keith from PocketGamer.biz will be out there covering all that news, and because of that, we actually did a bit of a roundup of some of the studios in Cologne. Cologne's not known as a big kind of games hub for the German games industry. I mean, kind of Berlin and Hamburg and places like that are much kind of more well known. But there's a few kind of startup companies there. It's more of like a TV kind of film type place, Cologne. But yeah, check out PocketGamer.biz, and we've got some interviews with some of this kind of startup companies who are kind of kicking off there. But we're still in a bit of a kind of financial kind of period, so companies are still giving out some figures. And so for this week, because it was quite a quiet week, I'm going to focus on figures, partly because I like figures, and I think partly because normally kind of figures give you a sense of what's going on in the world. So my first number is $5 million. So that was the money raised from a company called Gramble, who are a Dutch-based mobile charity kind of community discovery networking kind of company. Quite interesting. So they're basically providing like a social layer, kind of a bit like OpenFate used to do, and people like kind of Hazat and Gree. But the kind of focus of it is to allow people, while they're kind of discovering games and buying stuff in games, to give money to charity. So it's kind of interesting. They've raised $5 million, quite a lot of money. Another company who's been raising money is Vungle. They've raised $6.5 million. They're an American-based video advertising company, and I guess that goes to prove something we've all known for the last kind of 6 months, that video advertising is, certainly within mobile, is the big kind of like boom. So people are moving away from banners, obviously very boring, even like interstitial ads. Video is kind of where it's all happening. So $6.5 million for them to build out their platform. And the biggest financial round this week was $9 million, and that was for Apsalar. And they're kind of, they're very kind of technical in what they do, but they use they do kind of analytics for mobile games, and it's very behavioural focused. So they're kind of like looking to see how kind of people are interacting with kind of games and apps on their mobile devices, and then kind of working out the behaviour of individuals, and then kind of working out kind of what ads you want to show them. And so it's kind of a kind of interesting kind of interlinked kind of nature of advertising and knowing who people are. And I guess that's why they've raised more money, $9 million. That's a very financially lucrative kind of space if you can kind of create a big market there. There's been a few deals going on as well. So continuing with the mobile advertising, Millennial Media, who are a US floated company, they've bid $225 million for JumpTap, who are a smaller but more kind of a bit more kind of gaming focused mobile advertising network. With all these advertising networks, there's lots of kind of weird peculiarities. Like one's better at certain technical aspects and one's better at other ones. Millennial's kind of bigger than JumpTap, so they're kind of looking to kind of take their expertise and add it to kind of create a bigger company. And even bigger, because everything's bigger in China, isn't it? It's a deal that's been announced a while ago, but now has gone through. So basically, kind of a company called Baidu, which is effectively often seen as like the Chinese Google, so a big search kind of company. They've spent $1.85 billion buying a company called 91 Wireless, and 91 Wireless are one of the big kind of Android app store kind of distribution channels. So Baidu did have some kind of that kind of Android app store distribution, but not very big in the market. 91 Wireless was pretty big. So again, this is like a kind of two kind of companies who are roughly moving in the same direction, but one has different skill base from the other one. Kind of the idea is they'll come together, but obviously spending $1.85 billion in cash, it's quite a lot of money to spend to buy that kind of expertise. So, but it's very important for the Chinese market. Okay, some other big numbers, even bigger numbers. So a bit kind of late in the year to come out, you kind of think, but the Japanese mobile industry has come up with some figures for how big their market was in 2012, and they've come up with a figure of $5.1 billion, and that was the size of the mobile games market, just the mobile games market in Japan last year. The interesting thing about the Japanese market is it's still quite heavily influenced by what we would call feature phones. I mean, they're not quite feature phones in the sense that they're kind of much more kind of capable than what we would consider feature phones in the Western markets. But still, smartphones are only just about, it's about kind of a 50-50 split. Obviously, smartphones are growing very rapidly in Japan as in everywhere else in the world. But it's still, it's a big market, and it's still these kind of like these old devices that are particularly on kind of platforms like Gree and Mobage are still quite popular. But obviously, the Japanese market, $5.1 billion is a massive market. Okay. But that's not the biggest number. The biggest number of the week, and this is a bit of a kind of pie in the sky type number, I think. But some analysts at Juniper, who are one of these kind of market analyst companies who kind of come up with these slightly ridiculous numbers, to my way of thinking anyway, have kind of put their finger in the air like this, and by 2017 they reckon the market for free-to-play apps and games will be worth $75 billion. I mean, quite how they worked that out. Obviously, they've looked at what they think the market is now and taken numbers like the Japanese kind of $5 billion for last year, and they've kind of like added them all together and times them by 1.5 and done a fudge factor. Whether that's the case or not, we don't know, because in 2017, who knows, there might be some other crazy thing we're all doing, and maybe paid games will have had some weird resurrection, or maybe we're all doing subscription, who knows. But anyway, that's how big they think the market is going to be in a number of years' time. Now, there's some numbers for you. That's not the only thing that's been going on on the news that we've been covering on PocketGame.biz. I guess the underlying thing we've known for a while, going on for about a year now, is kind of BlackBerry. It's kind of like pootling along. It's kind of launched its new BlackBerry 10 platform. It's kind of got some traction, but still being kind of beaten by Windows Phone to third place. So they announced this week, and they have been talking about this for a long time, but they've announced kind of more formally that they're going through a strategic review process to think, what can they do? Can they sell themselves? Can they partner with someone else? What's the future? It's kind of hard being fourth place in this kind of market. And another thing on PocketGame.biz is not always about numbers and business and that kind of stuff. We like to kind of have some opinion pieces. We're very opinionated, obviously, and we have our guest columns. And our guest columns this week, not particularly planned by us, but they were for kind of two, I guess, kind of more thoughtful kind of columns. So Fraser Mackins, who used to kind of work for Pocket Game, and now is a game developer. So he came up with a column. It was quite controversial, really. He was saying kind of he loves gamers, and when he was a gamer, and he kind of thought the industry, he was quite naive about it, and kind of thought everyone who was a gamer would be like him. He's quite philosophical and thoughtful, and he's basically, after working in the industry for 8 years, he's kind of come up with the conclusion that a lot of gamers are just a bit jerks, and he doesn't really like talking to them that much. And he didn't really come up with any conclusions how this should change. I think he thought mobile was a bit more of an interesting industry because it's a bit wider, kind of consumer based, not just kind of hardcore guys talking about kind of a Call of Duty or anything. But I guess he was kind of thinking maybe a little bit about kind of how you approach that kind of audience. And that was kind of taken up as a theme by Oscar Clark. So Oscar is a kind of consultant and works for various companies and has been around the industry a long time. And he came up with a kind of a concept which he called the unique player proposal. And his kind of view, I guess if Fraser was taking the kind of negative side, kind of Oscar was taking the positive side of an audience. And he's saying there's so many games out there, you have to think about an audience, and you have to think, if you're coming up with a game, what is the unique proposition for a gamer? And he actually says, as a thought experiment, game developers should come up with an individual player. Obviously, invent them, but say there's this guy. He's 25. He's called Mike. He works for. He's a bus driver, and he likes playing. What games he likes playing, and just kind of try and create like some of these kind of individuals, and try and think, why would they like my game? Obviously, you do focus testing and stuff, but he's saying this is a very cheap kind of way. It's certainly for a group of developers to just kind of like a blue sky, kind of think about how these things might happen. So plenty of things to read on PocketGamer.biz, and I'm sure there'll be plenty more next week when we've been to Cologne, or Keith has at least. Thanks very much. See you next week.